Hello and welcome back. With the new Charters of Commerce release, trade has, of course, become much stronger, and so what we are going to be doing today is we are going to be offering up a top 5 list for the top countries to be going for a wide trade-oriented playthrough in Victoria 3. Now, generally speaking, we are going to be a little bit more focused on resources and agriculture for our top 5 list in terms of things you are specializing in so that you can trade them, export them, and these types of things. We are also going to be, since we are focused on being wide, focused on expansion. And I think that these two go well together because you need to expand once you've capped out resources or agriculture into new areas, and whereas you can continuously build for manufacturing up as high as you want. With that in mind, we will have a sort of thematic expansion plan for each of these nations. Now, something we are also going to be doing is, from the top 5 list, we are going to discuss our 2 in honorable mentions, but we are going to excluding all of the great powers. All of the great powers can specialize in stuff. They have really monstrous companies, they have good prestige goods, and every single great power can do something that's interesting in regards to trade, and so we are going to be excluding them from our list, just with the kind of understanding that you will be able to do this with any of them and have a reasonable playthrough leaning into the things that you have an advantage in. For our first honorable mention, we have the United States. Generally, as far as GPs go, they are quite a bit more resource-oriented. They also do have some natural harbor bonuses in some places, allowing them to really facilitate trade, but they have really, really strong wood. I think wood is still the strongest industry in the game overall, especially in the early game, and they can really kick things off as a result of having this hardwood output bonus. And with new trade, having an output bonus is even better than it was before, because the problem before is you would get flooded with hardwood. Now, since trade has less friction, you can really dump a bunch of hardwood into the global economy. You also have places with very good resources overall, like Pennsylvania having a very large amount of coal and iron, and you also have stuff like Illinois, which I believe is the highest lead location in the game. But something I also wanted to draw attention to is America has some of the very best companies in the game. In particular, there's a new one this patch called the Lee Wilson and Company. This one is going to probably be the best cotton company in the game. It has a prestige good for cotton. It also has wood, which is outstanding. You want to slot this in basically as soon as you are able to. And not only this, the additional add-on company for this that it has is railways, which is incredibly strong. You also do have the new company, the Colt Revolver Company, which is going to give you quite a strong advantage in military, not only because you have a prestige good of Colt revolvers, but also because you have additional army offense as your prestige bonus, prosperity bonus. As our next honorable mention, we will have Russia, which is extremely good for basically the same reasons the United States is. It does have an extremely good logging advantage with the logging throughput, though notably output is going to be better, but it has some of the very best resource estates in the game, or just kind of the best resource estates in the game. Perm has a bunch of oil on top of this. What it has, Ural will have a bunch of gold that appears in addition to having over 80 both iron and coal. It's absolutely incredible, and there's tons and tons of states that are really good like this. In particular, as far as the companies go, Russia has access to the only company in the game that has prestige oil in Baku Oil, which is going to be particularly strong. This is going to be a very nice one to be having. And also, Baku itself, the location, the state, has 240 oil. On top of that, Russia has some of the very best companies in the game. We have Lil Pop Rao & Co. being one of the best tooling companies, and we also have New Russia Limited with one of the additional company industry add-ons that it could get. It's not the loud cars outside. They can add tooling on top of this, making this, it might not be the best company in the game, but it is the most complete company in the game, giving you iron, coal, tools, and steel. The reason why it might not be the best is it just has too much of a good thing. It also has one of the few companies that has a prestige good for iron, but when I say it has too much of a good thing, there's a lot of different companies that can add on new industries now, and they can add on some of the best ones, and you already have them all in New Russia Limited, so it's more of a jigsaw puzzle type of game in balancing your companies, but this one is very, very notable, as is the prestige good for oil that you get out of the state of Baku. First up, in 5th place, we have Wallachia, which starts out as a subject of the Ottoman Empire. This is going to be the most challenging start to execute in terms of the game plan we have offered up, because you are sandwiched between Russia, Austria, and the Ottoman Empire, and so you'll have to pit them against each other in order to get some success going. You notably have a bunch of oil that appears here, very strong state, but the thing that we are here for as it relates to having a trade advantage is going to be the Calle Ferrate Rome company. In order for this company to appear, you do need primary culture Romanian, and while there are a couple other railway companies that give plus 10% trade capacity, this is the only one that gives plus 15%, which makes Wallachia tied for the very highest trade capacity you can't achieve in terms of the modifier here. So this is why we are suggesting it for a go wide playstyle. You also have this very good loud car outside in Staue Romana, which is going to be one of the better oil companies. The add-on industry for this is going to be power plants, and it's going to give plus 20% oil extractors throughput. This is going to be fairly nice. In terms of the game plan, you're going to look to utilize Russia and Austria to beat up the Ottoman Empire, try and expand into the Balkan region of the Ottoman Empire, as far as trade goes, securing the 25% trade capacity Isle of Syros will be very nice, but since we're expanding wide, having individual state bonuses is going to be a little bit less useful. But in terms of a long-term goal that we can have for Wallachia, we can come into the journal entry and look at nation formation, and we got a couple things going on. We can first form Romania. Yeah, there's a nice dopamine hit, and then we can double up and then form the Danubian state, which is going to be a nice big country. This will involve us fighting, Austria multiple times, fighting Russia once or twice, fighting the Ottoman Empire. But if we fight Russia, we can also always go after Baku, which is that state that we were talking about earlier, where we have an enormous amount of oil appearing and does have the really good oil company. And so you can look to get some expansion into there, and also into Iraq, which is going to have a lot of oil as well as the leftmost section of Persia. And so you can look to trade oil, use the oil prestige good that you can get from the company over here that we pointed out with Russia, and also, go for your nation formations as you have the most trade capacity possible and stack these modifiers. Next up, in 4th place, we have another subject of the Ottoman Empire in Egypt. Now, notably, Egypt did acquire a Nile River bonus here that now includes MAPI, or Market Access Price Impact, so they can transport resources very well all the way down to Blue Nile, which is where most of your pops are. We do also have a significant advantages here in agriculture and plantations, and so if we want to focus on these goods and export these goods, in particular in the early game, this is something we can do if we want to lean into that sort of thing. Notably, as far as companies go, we also, much like Romania, have access to one of these trade capacity railway companies. The other industry we can add on top of this is motor industries. There's only one other company that gives this, and so it's a bit of a curious thing that they are located so close in the same region. But the main company that is the one to write home about, and is why Egypt is up here, is going to be the Suez Canal Company. It's going to be nice and centered in your field of vision. This is the pride and joy of why you are going to be a trade empire. It is extremely strong. It gives you another company slot, so it's free. It is slot free, 50,000 free trade income, 25% trade advantage on top of what we could get from that railway. That's 35%, really stacking it up, and also gives you industries in ports and trade centers. I think the add-on is a shipwright. I'm not 100% sure, but as far as countries go, this is going to be one of the easier ones to employ up and also build the canal, and it is going to be fairly straightforward. We also have another interesting company in the Messier Spinning and Weaving Company, which is one of two companies that get a prestige good in cotton, although we might not want to use this company, and we'll get back to that, but it is going to have the add-on of silk, and this is going to have some relatively nice vertical integration, as you can produce cotton and silk in a location colonization, you can choose to tariff the cotton, and then you can use that cotton to get additional throughput on the textile mills. And by doing this, you will be able to get much higher throughput than other people are, giving you an advantage as far as export of those textiles. Or you could just export the cotton yourself, or you could export the cotton in the early game and then transition to being textile mills later on. As far as expansion goes, it is quite nice that we have a nice colonization route into Africa. This is Egypt is very unique in this, as they can just colonize straight down. They're not limited by convoys, although convoys are less of a limit overall, and they can get started right away, giving them access to a ton of resources down here, which are going to be valuable for both trade and utilization. And then also, we are planning on expanding into the Ottoman Empire and then into Persia, which has tremendous resources and a whole lot of arable land for this agrarian stuff, with which we might generate other advantages, use companies for, or lean into. Now, there is a little bit of a chance that we want to also push as far as Afghanistan for a particular company, and let's kind of talk about some of these other companies now. First up, on our conquest to Persia through the Iraq region, which is in the Ottoman Empire, we will gain access to the Turkish Petroleum Company. This notably gives additional trade capacity. Its extra industry you can add on is going to be the power plants, 5% railway building throughput. It is certainly solid enough, and it is something that can kind of be used to justify, your expansion in terms of a payoff / reward you get as you start to push into the very resource-dense Persia. More of Central Asia than Afghanistan, but we have the Da Afghan Nasaji Sharkat company, which is going to have a prestige good designer clothes. It is going to be a textile mill company. Its additional industry is going to be cotton, and it is also going to give you a 5% trade capacity. Now, of course, this competes with the cotton company. I kind of think going for the cotton company might be better, but if you were looking to specifically stack trade capacity, this is another option that is kind of on your route. Now, if you're leaning into cotton and clothes, there is going to be some very nice areas that you can go after as you start to get into India, or pushing as far as Kalasa Raj, which is going to have a ton of arable land and, as you can see, a ton of access to cotton, silk, and dyes, which will be an awesome place to produce this, on top of having a nice MAPI modifier and a agriculture / plantations modifier. If you go after this and also Sind, you can set up yourself a very nice, in kind of the far eastern portion of your empire, base for the production of clothing and the goods that are used to produce that clothing. And then in the southwest of the area of your empire, you can go after all these places that will eventually have rubber, which you can also use to produce clothing. And this is going to be quite nice for you. Of course, they don't have rubber now, but they also have access to a ton of wood, which is something that you sorely lack in Egypt. So this is going to be a nice kind of idea for expansion. Finally, as Egypt, you will also have access to the formation of Arabia. You just need to go after the Arabian Peninsula. Incidentally, some of the places we want to expand in anyways for the company are going to be part of the formation, so you can release Iraq from the Ottoman Empire, then subjugate them, subjugate Arabia, these types of things, and then you can click the nice dopamine button for formation of Arabia. Next up, in third place, we have Bolivia, with the idea of cornering the rubber market and utilizing that to either export rubber with a tariff, or to have an advantage for yourself in tools. If you go after all of South America and all of Africa, there won't be very much rubber left, just some in Central America and also some here in Southeast Asia, both of which you can also go for. But coming in, why this is good for trade, one of the big features is going to be these three states, which have the Cordillera de la Costa modifier. It gives plus 25% trade capacity. There's only 5 states in the game, as far as I can tell, that have access to plus 25% trade capacity, and 3 of them are located in the southwest of South America here, and so this is going to be quite nice. The other being the London Docklands, and also one of the states in Greece that has this, and so you're going to have a very strong advantage in trade early on, but also there's a very smooth expansion kind of pathway as it relates to your companies. In the beginning, you can go after the Antofagasta company here, the Compañía de Salitras y Ferrocarril de Antofagasta, which is going to give you access to sulfur and railways, but the big feature here is that your add-on extra industry is going to be iron. 5% infrastructure is going to be quite nice, but this pairs really well just very early on with the generic wood and rubber company, which you definitely want a rubber company if you're trying to corner the rubber market. This will have as its add-on company tools, and so you will have tools, wood, and also iron, which is going to be quite nice. But after this, you will have two solid options for adding coal. You will have generic steel, which does give the refined steel prestige good. This, as one of its add-on companies or industries, can add coal, and so you'll have coal and steel. Or you can go for the little spicy Empresas Electrices Asociadas. You can also go for both if you like, but this will also add coal as a secondary industry, and both of these give 5% state construction efficiency. This electricity throughput is always nice, but 5% state construction efficiency is going to be pretty nice, or is going to be even nicer on you here in South America, because if you have negative state construction efficiency modifier, this increases the value of state construction efficiency by more than it would for other countries, and you are going to have to deal with the Amazon and all this rough terrain. It's going to be one of the continuous challenges that you have. Of note is the Sao Paulo Railway Company. This is the final railway company that does give trade capacity. You need to have a state in Brazil in order to get it, but this is going to be quite nice if you really want to lean into trade capacity maxing. The industries attached to it are both logging and motor industries. You can go for this, but the real big company, the really important one for this region, is of course the Panama Canal, which is going to be available once you annex New Granada. It's exactly the same as the Suez Canal. Tax income plus one max number of companies, so it is free, does add the shipbuilding industry, and is going to require that you construct this big canal project. Now, you are going to, of course, get New Granada as Bolivia by going into the journal entry and doing the nation formation, the major nation formation, which you can do diplomatically if you so choose, of forming the Federation of the Andes. Now, if you didn't want to play as Bolivia and you instead wanted to do something like play as New Granada or Venezuela, you will also get the opportunity to form Gran Colombia. I believe you could go Gran Colombia into Federation of the Andes, but this is going to be the long-term plan, cornering the market on rubber, going after all of South America, and then as much of Africa as you can. And so by doing this, you can kind of really cut everyone else out from the market with just small patches of rubber available, which you can also go for. Central America is soft, South America is soft, Africa you can wheel and deal your way in utilizing treaties, new treaty situation in order to gain individual access to different regions where you can get a non-colonization agreement in order to prevent them from colonizing the region. And then, of course, Southeast Asia, also going to be soft and easy to expand into. Next up, we have the East India Company in second place, which is well poised to dominate anything as it relates to trade in terms of both manufacturing and also agrarian goods. You really have a lot of really positive stuff going on. To kick things off, you have enormous amounts of arable land and also potentials for an enormous amount of different plantation things. You have companies for all these things, and so you can really kind of lean into whichever one that it is you want. In terms of state bonuses, you also have these monstrous agriculture and plantations bonuses. Nobody has ones that are bigger. You have several MAPI bonuses alongside these rivers, which is going to be quite strong. And then finally, you have, in terms of state modifiers, several natural harbors. And these natural harbors are in very high population places. You can apply them for agrarian goods in the places that also have agrarian bonuses. Notably, East and West Bengal are going to have a ton of agriculture agriculture and also going to have these bonuses. This is going to be quite powerful. You can build for the pops consuming there. You have a workforce available. You can build stuff that you will export. You can build plenty of vertically integrated things like textile mills where you have the silks as the input, the dyes as the input. You have the very powerful rice farms in these locations. And then if we kind of take a look at opium in particular, if you want to be the absolute drug lord, the druggist of lords, this is probably the best one to do about it, or do it with, because if we look at goods potentials, really a lot of it is here in India. It just takes a little expansion into Southeast Asia, taking Yunnan off of Great Qing, and then going after Persia, and you've effectively cornered the market as it relates to opium. So an opium run where you go after the prestige good, you subvent this opium out, and you look to shift everyone's intoxicant consumption onto the very, very powerful opium. The PM is quite good, is something that we are going to really excel on India in particular. But you also have access to some of the very best manufacturing throughput modifiers as well. In addition to being able to get companies for clothing, you can have your petite bourgeoisie gives plus 10% manufacturing industries throughput. This can double, of course, giving plus 20% in manufacturing industries throughput. And the same thing applies for your trade unionists. Your trade unionists isn't changed, so you have access to 40% manufacturing industries throughput. Now, this isn't without a concession. You do have to give up the kind of nice bonus on your industrialist, where you aren't going to get the capitalist investment pool contribution efficiency. But if you're building stuff overseas in other people's countries, getting agreements allowing you to build overseas, this is actually less of a malus than it used to be. Another thing you have going on, and this is going to relate in terms of the execution of the run, is you do have the very, very interesting circumstance where you can't make any companies because you are a company yourself, and you can't found the East India Company, as far as I can tell, if Great Britain already has it found and they don't get rid of it. So you will eventually hit a crossroads where you get independence from Great Britain and then they keep the East India Company. So that will be an awkward situation for you. It is very fortunate you have a suitable replacement in the David Sassoon Company. Its additional industry is ports, which is going to be unnecessary if you grab either of the canals, but you will have a prestige good of opium. You will be able to produce opium and cotton with this. Incidentally, cotton is something that you want, and generic companies, silks and dyes, can cover the rest of your inputs for clothing, so that is quite nice. They might have a better industry for that kicking around, but there's another industry I wanted to kind of just point out a little bit quickly here, which is going to be a very nice company for this wood prestige good, teak, the Bombay Burma Trading Corporation, which as its additional industry will have oil. This is going to be a very interesting oil company. It might be the best oil company. It's difficult to tell between this and another company, which is in Burma proper, if I recall correctly, which is going to have rice, oil, and wood as its additional company, but this one giving you a nice little boost to your coffee and tea, in addition to the loud car outside, which always needs a boost, and giving you this prestige good in hardwood is going to be something that's quite nice, and it's going to be something that you can slot in relatively early, but not if you're a chartered company, because companies aren't allowed for companies. You can't have shell companies for your companies. That wouldn't be allowed. I think it's also worth pointing out that the Victoria Terminus is in Bombay, and this is quite a powerful monument building, which gives you 20% railway building throughput globally. Finally, in first place, we have the Japanese Shogunate. With the game plan of expanding into Manchuria, there's tremendous resources here, but not pictured here is an absolutely enormous amount of gold. Something like 40 to 50 here. There's like 10 in Hokkaido. There's another 10 or so in Russia that you can go after. There's going to be some that you can go after in Alaska. If you're feeling frisky, this will make the US angry at you. And you can also go into Indonesia for both Russia and oil, which you will need, specifically in the western portion of Brunei, and then also Southeast Asia could be a target. But as it relates to being an absolute trade power, you have an enormous density of not loud cars outside, although we'll get to the Mitsubishi company, but of these natural harbor bonuses, which are incredibly strong, giving you additional trade capacity, and also all these other modifiers. This is something we value, and you start with an enormous amount of your population underneath these. It's just Chubu and Tohoku that do not have these. That's 5 million, that's 3 million, so let's call that 9 million. So 2/3 of your nation, in terms of population, has these bonuses, and they extend over here. Also new is going to be these rice bonuses, which should suffice and be quite nice, because they will give you rice farms building throughput. Rice is really good to lean into, and so this is going to be something that we like here as well. But this isn't the big reason that you go for on Japan, or why Japan is really going to be quite nice for leaning into being a trade state, having specialization in this type of thing. Instead, no, it is going to be the companies. Now, these companies are going to be unique to Japan because a lot of them, not quite all of them, require that you complete the Honorable Restoration Journal entry, which would be difficult if you were Russia, not because you don't have any honor, although you might not have honor, but because you don't have the journal entry, and so completing it becomes impossible. And so we're going to be going through these. There's quite a few of them, and they have quite a bit going on. Alright, so first up, we have the Mitsui Company, which notably has lead. There are a lot of really good companies in the game, but there isn't very good lead coverage of those companies, and so if you're trying to jigsaw puzzle in the absolute best 7-company setup that one could possibly have, or 6-company setup, 7-company setup is going to be the maximum. I think it's fairly probable that the country is going to be Japan, and one of the companies is going to be Mitsui. Now, we also gain access to the textile mills and silk combo with the prestige good of silk, which is going to increase throughput on the textile mills, so you can look to export specifically the textiles, because you will have a relatively high advantage in that, and the silk plantations are going to be quite nice. In terms of the companies we could add on top of this, we're going to have shipyards, ports, iron mines, and also chemical plants, and so that's going to be quite strong. We are going to be skipping over Mitsubishi because this one's the most important, so we'll save it for last. And next up, we have the South Manchuria Railway Company. It does require completing the Honorable Restoration, and I think that this was a strong candidate for best company last patch, but I'm not so sure it's going to be the best company anymore. It is going to give you access to railways, coal, and also glass. Glassworks also generally kind of hard to find coverage on, although Japan has another good alternative for glassworks. In terms of industries you could add on top of this, you could add food or chemical plants, which aren't necessarily the best additions, but this is still going to be a very solid railway company, and it is going to be one that you maybe want to lean into. Wheat farms building throughput is going to be nice, and colony growth speed is going to be somewhat nice, although maybe a little gratuitous for Japan, who can grow colonies pretty well with their population. Next up, we have the new company, which does not require you complete the Honorable Restoration. This one requires no honor for you to be able to set up, but this is going to be a glassworks company, and the added additional company that you, or industry you can add to it, is going to be logging camps, which is very strange. Logging industries, I think, are generally pretty good. Logging plus glass seems pretty good. The prestige good of the porcelain here is also going to be quite nice. The thing is having this and the South Manchuria Railway Company really kind of kills the glass effectively on one of them, but you also have really good modifiers here that are strange and difficult to find. Influence, percent influence, I do think this patch is going to be influence is going to be more important because forming a bunch of diplo agreements is going to be useful, and so 5% influence is something we value. Generally speaking, I think it's kind of hard to find percentage influence modifiers, if I recall correctly, but it's been a hot minute since we've taken a look at all these. We are getting these from, I believe, our daimyo right now, or the landowner equivalent, but this infamy decay modifier, I think this is the only company that gives this. This is generally a hard modifier to find, and this is actually very strong because it allows you to expand more than you otherwise would while not accruing as much infamy. And so if you are looking to be expansionist, which we are for our wide playstyle, the presence of this is going to be useful, but anyone can pick it up if they pick up Kansai, unless this has one of the hidden culture requirements of Japanese, because very often with the culture requirements, they don't display them if you have the culture, which is a little bit frustrating. And then finally, we have this Landfang company, which is the main reason why we want to expand in Indonesia. This has gold and ports. Now, we're probably going to get ports at some point through a canal or as an added industry, and so this is maybe not the most important, and gold isn't necessarily the best thing to write home about, but there's two things we really like about this. The first is the add-on company for this is rice. The add-on industry is rice. Rice is super nice. It should cost double the construction. It does. It costs 200 construction, as does every other wheat-oriented industry that is present. But the difference between rice farm and a wheat farm is the rice farm will have roughly double the output and employ double the people as a wheat farm. So it effectively should cost 400 construction, but it only costs 200. And so being able to get a very nice industry on that is going to be good. And I think that this might be one of the better, if not the best, rice companies in the entire game here in Landfang. We're also, incidentally, in terms of our expansion plan, we're going to pick up 50 or so gold here, 20 gold here, the forbidden 10 gold here, and maybe another 10 gold down here. That's an enormous amount of gold, not to mention the little bit in Hokkaido, so we could actually make good use of the gold stuff. And on top of all of that, the agriculture throughput, this is an incredible modifier because it applies to subsistence farms. And so we, as Japan, are likely to have subsistence farms early on, and gold mines are likely to be incredibly good early on, and so this is going to be something that's really good. We just have to accept Hakka culture, which is also an interesting modifier. We do see we share heritage with them in East Asian heritage, but this is also the first time we've seen this acceptance modifier because this is a new company. But that all said, let's get on to the main event here, which is going to in fact be the Mitsubishi company as it relates to establishing a trade empire. Now, I don't know if this is best in slot as a company, but I think it's quite good for trade orientation. First of all, we do have paper mills. I do think paper as an industry is fairly decent. We also have access to military shipyards, which we don't anywhere else, so we get a little bit of coverage here. And then we also have access to coal. A lot of double coverage here for the Japanese kind of companies because we have coal on the railway company, the Manchuria Railway Company, and we also have double coverage with that with glass with the other new company. So maybe the Manchuria Railway Company is not going to be worth using. As far as added industries, we could add shipyards, iron, ports, and motor industries. So a lot that we can add, but the thing we're writing home about is in fact this Wasashi paper. This is the only prestige good for paper, and it leads into a lot of things that really benefit from throughput. And so, you know, getting throughput on the government administrations is quite strong because the only other way you can get it is economies of scale. And so since you can't stack it in other ways, throughput will tend to be more valuable. Same for universities. Although universities have decreased the amount that they utilize on labor in terms of expenses, it is still going to be very valuable to have throughput on universities. We tend to only have level 1 arts academies if we are doing or relatively low levels, but a bunch of level 1s if we do the migration thing. And we do have this in explosive industry, but the very curious one is the skyscraper. The skyscraper has a very interesting PM, which is going to give you plus 25% trade capacity. So if you increase the throughput on that by 10% or by 20% via the Wasashi paper, you will get plus 5% trade capacity, which it's like, okay, isn't this kind of like the same as Romania having access to a railway that's 5% better than the other railways, and Romania was number 5? Why is Japan number 1 here? Well, other people build skyscrapers, and honestly, I don't know which PM the AI tends to use. But if the AI is using, to some degree, the trade nexus of PM on the skyscraper, then what that's going to mean is that when you export a whole bunch of paper and dump it into their markets, you're actually going to increase the number of imports that they engage in because you're going to be increasing their trade capacity by 5%. And if you could increase global trade capacity by 5%, which I've not confirmed here, it should operate in this way unless I am mistaken, then what you can do is you can really accelerate and churn global trade even more than you otherwise would be able to as a result of having prestige paper. and that's going to be our top 5 here. Feel free to, if you disagree with any of these, or you think I missed a country that deserves to be in here and wasn't in here, please feel free to put it in the comments. If you also want to see one of these videos, we've done tall, we've done wide, you want to see it for GPs, feel free to let me know as well. If you like this video, feel free to like, comment, subscribe, / hit the notification bell, you know, all the YouTube algorithm things, and then if you've been sitting for an extended period of time, please consider getting up and taking a walk, moving around a little bit, getting some blood flow going, and other than that, have a good one.